On one Monday morning, just about 1 o'clock, the great ship Titanic began to reel and rock. People on board began to cry, saying, "My Lord, I'm bound to die." It was sad when that great ship went down. Oh, it was sad. It was sad. It was sad when the great ship went down. Husbands and wives, little children lost their lives. It was sad when that great ship went down.
Good evening. Please step this way. Enter right here. Mind your step. Watch your head. Enjoy. Have a fine evening.
Prior to her marriage to Walter Clark, Virginia McDowell visited her Santa Rosa relatives on many occasions, meeting many of the local townspeople. Once she married, Virginia enjoyed a life of wealth and comfort. She and her husband traveled to the United States aboard the newest, largest, most spectacular, and unsinkable cruise ship, the Titanic. After the sinking, Virginia travels to Santa Rosa to recuperate from her ordeal. Join us as we eavesdrop on Santa Rosa's one and only link to the Titanic sinking, Virginia McDowell Clark. The time is spring 1912.
Oh, that poor dear. Imagine what she's been through.
Oh, yes, Laura, but I would have been more impressed if she had set aside her high society manners long enough to at least say hello.
But Gladys, she's still recovering. She lost her husband, and she nearly died herself.
Very true, Edith. Oh my, look at the crowd that's gathered. You folks may have a long wait. The Clark family is keeping a close guard.
We've already been told absolutely no visitors. Doctor's orders.
I heard she was on the ship with Mrs. John Jacob Astor, one of the wealthiest people on board. Well, I heard she has a new beau, and they intend to be married just as soon as her late husband's affairs have been laid to rest, so to speak.
Well, I heard that she's hardly seen her little boy since she got back. That poor lad, just 2 years old. He lost his father, and now his mother can't even be bothered.
Those dreadful women gone? Yes, dear.
Oh!
I think she's come out. Do you suppose she's feeling better now?
I think so.
Oh, Virginia, these women remember you from when you were here when you were younger. Thing is right, dear. They want to wish you well.
I just wish they'd all go away. I can't go anywhere without people pestering me for my story, even when I'm here in Little Santa Rosa.
Well, perhaps if you told us.
It might help you to feel unburdened.
Virginia, we hear your nightmares.
Okay, but then I never want to speak of it again. It was Sunday, 11:40 p.m. I was just climbing into bed when I felt a jolt. Did we collide with another ship? I climbed up onto my bath to look out the porthole to see a perfectly white background. Something was wrong. I had to get to Walter. He was playing cards.
You entered the men's lounge?
No, I stood in the doorway until I finally got his attention. But Walter was saying there was nothing to worry about. The Titanic was unsinkable.
How did you get out?
Oh, we heard the calls for the women and children, but Walter said, why trade the bright decks of the Titanic for a few dark hours in a rowboat? I felt safer with my husband. We wandered for 2 hours and it was still total chaos. People were screaming to go different directions. The boat started to tilt. We finally ended up on the first-class promenade deck. The men had to push the deck chairs up against the window so we could climb out and into the lifeboats. Walter stayed back with the other men. He waved goodbye to me as the boat lowered us 15 feet to the sea below. I know now it was 1:55 a.m. That was the last time I saw him. We were 40 in a lifeboat built for 65. We rowed and managed to rescue some of the other men. If only Walter had jumped. If only we had found him.
Virginia, you had no other choice. Walter would want you to live.
We sat in the lifeboat like stone figures. The boat roared and took its final plunge. And this noise, like a huge swarm of bees. Cries more terrible than I'd ever heard. And then the silence. As if devastation had silenced all human emotion. It was dark and still. I was so cold. There were pieces of furniture and ice floating all around us. And people. 2 of the men we had rescued died. There were so many shooting stars.
Then it's true about the legend. When someone dies, there's always shooting stars.
Toward dawn, we saw the Carpathia draw near, but we were too weak to signal or wave or even cry out. It had already rescued a few of the lifeboats and was starting to leave.
Oh, no.
So the story in the newspapers, is it true? About the dog rescuing you?
I don't know. I was too numb to pay attention.
What's this about a dog?
Oh, they say it swam about in the sea for about 3 hours. Its barking alerted the Carpathia's captain, who then noticed Virginia's lifeboat. Otherwise,
Well, how could a dog survive in freezing water? They say that the people died of hypothermia within 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, this was a Newfoundland, bred for the harshness of the North Atlantic. Webbed feet, a rudder-like tail, and a water-resistant coat that makes it a perfect swimmer, like the polar bear.
I only had my night clothes under my fur.
That's Virginia. She's at the window. Let's get closer.
Most of the women were still in their ball gowns. Some were still in night clothes. Very few were fully dressed. Once aboard the Carpathia, the women were wandering around the deck screaming their men's names. Some of them were collapsed on the decks crying. I just stayed in the first-class library. So exhausted. Oh, and Isabel, was I right to leave Walter? Should I have left the ship? People keep asking me what I think. I don't know. I just wish they don't leave me alone. Even here.
Oh! Do something!
Folks, I know you're curious about Mrs. Clark, but as you're aware, she has endured a horrendous ordeal, and she's quite distraught by your presence. I must ask you to leave. Go about your business. If there's anything else you need to know, I'm sure you'll read it in the Press Democrat.
We each deal with tragedy in our own way. After the Titanic, Virginia recovered her health enough to remarry 5 months later. She and her new husband departed for France, leaving her young son behind in the care of his nurse. Walter's father filed a petition in Superior Court and was granted temporary guardianship. A nasty custody case was eventually resolved when Virginia and her father-in-law agreed to share custody. 705 people survived the Titanic sinking and about 1,500 died. Virginia's great-aunt, Isabella Shearer, died in October 1913 and is buried here. The price of Virginia and Walter's first-class ticket on the Titanic, in today's dollars, almost $60,000.